Hi everyone, welcome back. So after today's video, I will challenge you to name a weakness that is not covered. So I covered 99% of weaknesses in chess. We're gonna go through three steps or three main areas. The first one is going to be piece coordination, pawn structures, and king safety. Some of these areas overlap, so you might find a weakness that is piece coordination and at the same time pawn structures. I recommend to rewatch the video and pause at any time that you feel like, oh, wait, what is happening in this position. So first identify the weakness, name the weakness. It can be, oh, the rook is misplaced or the pawn structure, and then find the move. Okay, so I hope you like this one. Let's start. Misalignment of pieces can come in many different ways, but here we're gonna look at it from something simple to something more complex. For example, here these two bishops are on the same file, so we're gonna look for pieces on the same file or on the same rank. So here you can target these two bishops with your rook. It can also be that the pieces are on the same diagonal. For example, here the queen and the king that are being targeted by the bishop. Poor coordination of the pieces can also come from having two knights defending each other that can be targeted by different pawns, especially when these are on our side of the board. Another problem can arise when there is two knights on the same color complex. As you can see, all of the dark squares are covered, so these knights can jump in here, but none of the light squares are being protected. So now you can target with your light square bishop in this case. Something else to look for is two rooks on the same diagonal. So if you have these two rooks, look for tactical opportunities where you can, even if you move one of these rooks, then you wouldn't be able to save the other. So yeah, this can also be a misalignment problem. Okay, this is going to be a real game example. Pawns are going this way for black and the pawns are going this way for white. Now, what is the misalignment problem? The rook and the king are on the same file. So here you can easily sack the rook. Once the rook takes, now you can promote to a queen and you have a better position. Okay, feel free to pause the video now and try to figure out what is the weakness. Don't see the move first, but just what is the weakness in this position when it comes down to misalignment. Okay, I hope that you see it. You have the queen and the bishop on the same file. So you cannot attack it directly, but first you force the queen to move by moving the knight to a4. Once the queen moves, you have this move rook b1, and now you cannot save. You have a better position and you cannot save this bishop. Okay, so I want you to see the weakness first, and then you see the move. Pause the video now. Okay, so maybe you might have noticed the bishops on the same file. That is the problem, and the other problem is king safety. So now, how can you exploit that weakness? This is a bishop move, bishop to bishop f5. Sorry. Now, if black takes, this is checkmate. So black cannot take. What black is gonna have to do is castle. Then you can take here. Once that happens, you can take back on e6, and now you're gonna have a better position as you have more active pieces and you're open material as well. So yeah, I hope this one was helpful to spot misalignment issues that can happen in different stages of the game. Other great way to spot weaknesses is to look for overloaded pieces, which means a piece that is protecting too many pieces or too many squares. So in this case, you have this pawn that is protecting the bishop and the knight at the same time. So the best move will be to take with the knight here, and if he takes, you take the bishop. And even something that is kind of crazy here, you can take here with the rook, and you're still doing better with the bishop. So not the best move, but just to show you the example. This can happen with pretty much every piece on the board, including the king or pawns. So in this case, here's the king that is overloaded. As you can see, the king is protecting the rook and the pawn at the same time. So you can take this pawn. Once the king takes, you take back, and now you have a winning position. In this case, here's the queen that is overloaded. You can pause the video now, and I will show the example. So the queen is protecting this bishop. Sorry, the queen is protecting this knight and this pawn at the same time. So once you take this knight and the queen takes back on this in d7, you can give a check here, and now you're also gonna win this knight. And so yeah, it can also happen with the queen. This one is harder to see, but it's also the pawn on h7 that is overloaded. So here is doing two jobs. Here is protecting this pawn on g6, and at the same time is stopping the h6 pawn from advancing. So now you can kind of sack the bishop. Once they take, now you can push this pawn, and yeah, this will mean promotion for the white pieces. Okay, let's see here which piece is overloaded. Pause the video now and point at which piece is overloaded first. Okay, so if you said this pawn is protecting the queen and the rook, right? So the move is to take here, you take the rook. Once black takes back, now you can promote this pawn and you have a winning position. So even if something like this happens, let's say you get a check, now the queen is going to move. And yeah, there's nothing stopping the promotion of this other queen, and you have a better position with white. Okay, in this scenario, which piece is overloaded, has too many jobs? You can pause the video now. So if you set the rook on d8, you are correct. This rook is covering these squares, the back rank, and it's also protecting this rook. So now what you have to do, you have some tactics here. Now you can take this rook. If this black rook takes back, now you have here a winning position. The king will be forced to the side of the board, and now you can give a check. And let's say something like this happens, you take the other rook, and you are better with white now. Okay, in this position, which piece is overloaded? If you set the knight, then you are correct. So the knight is doing a job of preventing this back rank mate, and at the same time is protecting this bishop. So in this case, you can take this bishop, and if the white knight takes, this is going to be made in two. So yeah, the other resource for white to keep up the game is to give up the queen. So after this happens, white gives up the queen. This is going to be a check. You have to take, and then yeah, you have a winning position with black. Recognizing when a piece is inactive or undefended is going to help you identify weaknesses. Let's go first with inactive pieces. They're going to have limited mobility, poor positioning, or lack of influence. They are not controlling any squares in the center. So let's go with this example. Here we have the knight. Let me show you here. The knight on c6. If this knight was on f6, then it can control the e4 square as well as the h7. And then you can exploit these weaknesses by finding queen to d3. So this is going to be queen d3, then you're threatening to play checkmate. Now black has to ruin their pawn structure just to defend this position. Take a look at this position. Black just play d4, which is a miss. He should have played here. Now you have a move that doubles the position, doubles the pawns in the position. So which is going just to knight e6. You take the bishop, and now the opponent is going to be forced to take. And yeah, pieces are going to be weak. Okay, in this problem we have queen takes on d4, which is a huge mistake, it's a blunder. Then how can you exploit this position? As you can see, black's pieces are all in the back rank, and you have a good coordination of your bishop and the queen. So now the move is knight to f3. This is going to be a brilliant move. In this case, you can deliver mate in 1. In this scenario, we have many reasons to believe that white is much better. Just because all of these pieces don't have any space to travel. And yeah, we're not finding any brilliant moves here, but we can just grind it out. We're finding bishop to takes on b5, f5. And now once the queen activates, the black queen, now we can bring our knight and possibly give a check here. So yeah, we're much better with white. Pause the video now. I want you to pause the video and see how you can exploit the weaknesses in this position. So the bishop cannot be moved, and all of these pieces are cramped, which is going to be our next episode. So rook is threatening to take this knight. Okay, I hope you saw it. So the best move is to go knight g6. Yeah, if the queen takes, now this is going to be checkmate, mating 1, right? So yeah, this is the move. What black has to do actually is to go knight d6, and then yeah, this is going to be very difficult to defend. So we can also exploit weaknesses on undefended or unprotected pieces. Now in this position we have this bishop and this knight that are not being defended by other pieces. So although this knight doesn't have a lot of influence, and the piece to be attacked in this case is the bishop, right? So this one is going to be as simple as taking the knight. So it's not a discover attack, but we're opening an attack on this bishop. Now the last attempt to defend this bishop will be to take back with the rook, but we can easily play just e5, kicking out the rook. And yeah, in this position, white is gonna either have to lose the rook or the bishop. Okay, we also have a new position. I want you to point out which piece is undefended or can be vulnerable to tactics or attacks. So this rook, I think at a first glance, we can take a look at this rook and it's being undefended. So this was a huge blunder because the black rook is attacking the queen. But now we can go knight to c6. And yeah, whatever happens next is completely losing for black. So let's say black takes here. Now we have check back rank mate. So these interpositions are going to be useless. I want you to pause the video now, and we're going to find a brilliancy in this position. As you can see, white has now back rank issues. And which piece is undefended? I'm going to point out to this knight. So this knight, if we can get rid of this pawn, then you will be able to take the knight. So in this case, this was one of my games. I found knight e3. Yeah, I was like, okay, if white takes, I can give a check and I can also capture this knight. So that didn't happen in the game. Let me show you what happened. So this happened. Now there is a new move, a new brilliancy that you can find in this position. So you can ignore the threat of this happening because you have a bigger threat that you can create. So the move is rook to d8. Wait, didn't show the. Okay, yeah, the move is rook to d8 and white resign because now this is coming, and doesn't matter if black takes, if white takes. Okay, let's map out the weaknesses in this position for black. So which pieces are undefended? This rook, the queen, the bishop, and the knight is being protected by the queen, right? But who protects the queen? All right, let's map out which weaknesses black has in this position. Which pieces are undefended? The rook, the queen, the bishop, and the knight is being protected by the queen. So, but who protects the queen? Now, you can ignore this threat and actually go rook e1. So once black takes the queen, now you can give a check and you have a completely winning position. In this one, black just blunder. They played rook d8. Now I want you to think about pieces that are undefended, especially not pieces but pawns, pawns that are undefended, and king safety. So now you can sack the rook with a brilliant move. If black takes, which happened in the game, now you can recover that rook by giving a check and forking these two pieces. So I think this is one more than one category where black has many issues. The coordination of the pieces, this rook is overloaded, and at the same time king safety. So yeah. Next in our category, we have cluster or cram pieces, meaning that the opponent is not going to have a lot of space for their pieces to move around. So in this case, we have a rook endgame, which looks about equal. However, this rook doesn't have an open file, and this rook is not very active either. So now, here the best move in the position is just to protect this pawn, which doesn't leave this rook with many squares. And now we can bring our king to the activity, and yeah, this is going to be a winning position for white. So okay, I want you to pause the video on this one and try to see how you can exploit the cram pieces or the lack of space in this position for white. So white just move b3, which is a blunder. How can you find the best move? What will be the best move? So yeah, it's going to be queen to d6, targeting this bishop. And now there is nothing you can do to stop that. You can, or maybe you can either move the bishop or move the bishop, but then this knight is going to fall. So yeah, that's going to be a winning position for black. Whenever the opponent has current pieces, lack of space for their pieces to move around, as you can see, none of these are covering this side of the board. So what you can do now is look for short-term sacrifices. In this position, one of the best moves is to take on e6 with the knight. On d6 with the knight, sorry. So now once the king takes back, you can give a check, and now you're gonna try to promote the pawns, and you just have a lot more activity. So look for these weaknesses too. This one is also a great example where black pieces are on one side of the board and they don't have a very good coordination. So in this case, you can go rook h6, threatening to give a check here. So once black moves, you give a check and you have to give up the queen. And now this is a winning position, +6 for white. You can pause the video on this one. White moves or retreats the knight to d2. Now, what will be a move that paralyzes the position? They don't have a lot of these pieces don't have a lot of activity, and the thing to keep in mind here is you have an open file for this rook on f7. So yeah, the move is to sack the knight. Oh wait, I think I actually missed the move. So, but in the next one, I sack the knight, and now you cannot take, because if the king takes, now you give a check. This comes with tempo, and now you get a queen. So yeah, that's why this is a brilliant sacrifice. Okay, we have gone through piece coordination. Now we're going to move on to pawn structures. So okay, everything seems to be okay with the pieces. Now we can look for weaknesses in the position, looking at the pawn structures. Here we're gonna follow a reverse logic. If you see all the pawns on light squares, then you know the opponent has a weakness on the dark squares. So in this position, this block is also being blocked by their own pawns. So look for this as well. So now the queen can travel through all the black squares. Let's see other. Okay, give me a second. All right, in this case, we have exactly the same pawns, However, the position is actually equal and it is more balanced as the bishop is in a dark square, and now we have all these dark light square pawns. So it's gonna be very hard for black to break through. So it's gonna have to target probably this pawn, right? But it will be difficult. And the bishop is being supported by the king. In this case, all of the pawns are in dark squares. So you know the opponent is going to have all the weaknesses on the light squares. So as you can see, just to point it out, all of these squares are being covered. But yeah, what happens to the light squares? These are weak. So look for these weaknesses in the position. Okay, this is an example from a real game. What are the weaknesses in the position for black? If you see all the dark square pawns, then you see probably the light squares weaknesses. So this is what we're looking for here. So one of the best moves in the position is to put your knight on d2 and traveling to c4. So be sure that your pieces travel in those squares, in this case the light squares. Okay, so yeah, that is actually another blunder, which gives me the opportunity to put my bishop here and then bring my rook, bring my knight to c4. I always recommend studying different pawn structures. In this case, the stone wall. I have a video about that. So in this position, the weakest square for black is going to be the e5 square. So it will be very smart if you can put a knight here. Okay. This is one of the most common pawn structures, which is called the Carlsbad structure. In this case, white can go for a minority attack, and this is going to become a backward pawn, the c6 pawn. And you also have the e-files, the e-file to work on for white. Okay, now I took this from the National Master Robert Ramirez. He has a full course on how to attack pawn weaknesses. How do we target the isolated d pawn? He has a 6-step on how to do this. So first, activate major pieces. You want to activate the rook here. You got rook d1. Now you bring the other rook into the party. So the second is asking ourselves, what do we leave on the board? You trade out minor pieces when the opponent has an isolated d pawn. We are simplifying here. Okay, so we centralize the queen. That is the third step. So this is not really a step, but you also want to prevent the pawn from trading and from coming here. So you're stopping the pawn with this move. As then you want to activate the bishop. So okay, not that one. You want to activate the bishop by putting more pressure on the center. Now the next step is to gain space on another sector of the board. Black's pieces are tied down, so all of these pieces are, they don't have, you don't have any moves with black. So now you can play g4, and the last step is start attacking the king. Okay, so yeah, those are the 6 steps to attack an isolated d pawn. Okay, so what do we do when we play against double pawns? In this case, black has 2 pawns on the same file. The first thing you want to do is trade all pieces. So here you have the chance to take the knight. Yeah, you take it, it's all good. Then this move is also important. You throw in c4. You don't want to see this b5. Now once the rook goes back to e8, now you're targeting also this side of the board with the knight. Cutting off the king is important. So maybe you were thinking, okay, I'm gonna bring in my king. Yeah, that's crucial too. But here you want to first cut off the king. Don't let him in. So that's what we achieve with the move rook d3. Now we can bring our king into the game. So these are the steps that you have to follow, or that you should follow. First, trade all pieces, then get to an endgame. Cut off the king with the rook, and you also want to travel on the opposite side of the bishop. In this case, you want to travel on the dark squares as this knight and the king. All right, we have again double pawns. We're playing against double pawns. in the position, what do you want to do? Trade pieces. So here you just trade rooks. You don't worry about trying to capture other pawns. So once that happens, you're gonna capture the rook and you're going to create a pass pawn on your own. So now you can advance the h pawn, and yeah, this counts only as one pawn. It's not really it's not really like having 4 pawns versus 3 is more like 3 versus 3. This is a simple case of playing against double pawns, but here whether to take or whether to stop the pawn, yeah, you stop the pawn. So you don't really think about it that much. You don't take here. That will be a huge mistake. So here you just play c5 and now sit back in the position because you're going to be able to promote this pawn, the g pawn. If white runs out of moves, they're gonna have to push this pawn, and then you just simply take back, and yeah, you have a winning position. Okay, now let's get into backward pawns. I was playing this with white in a bullet game. So I immediately saw f5. I was like, okay, I see this backward pawn. How can I attack it? Yeah, I think it was fairly simple. Sometimes you just the information presents itself. I play g5. I can target this pawn, and once black takes, yeah, I can get rid of this knight which was protecting the backward pawn. Now this even comes with tempo, hitting the rook. So yeah, I didn't even have to think much about it, but I just went for the backward pawn. Okay, whenever we tackle backward pawns, there are 4 things to keep in mind. The first thing is put pressure on the backward pawn. Second, in front of this backward pawn, you're going to see a weak square, in this case c5. So maybe you can get an outpost. Get an outpost if possible. That's the third thing. However, in this position, we can just take the pawn. And make sure the backward pawn stays there and it does not advance, especially in the middle game. Yeah, here we can just be concrete and actually take the pawn. And after a few trades, we're gonna have a better position as this happens. And now we're just up the exchange in this one. In the last of our categories, you're going to find king safety. So maybe you haven't found a pawn structure weakness or a piece coordination. Let's go first with back rank. In this one is going to be easy. We know that the black pieces in this case cannot protect the back rank. So here we just take with the rook, and this is mating 1. However, it's not always going to be as simple. In this case, we have a mating 4. So you can actually give up the queen. Once the rook takes, now you can give a check on the back rank, and now any interposition is going to be useless. So even if the queen goes here, now you can finish the game like this, and this is mate in 4. Okay, this is a really fun example where you can exploit the back rank weakness. The characteristic is that these 3 pawns are going to be blocking the king from moving, right? From moving forward. In this case, the queen is protecting the 2 rooks. Pause the video now. Can you find the move that removes the queen from these 2 protecting squares? Because if the queen wasn't here, then you can give a check, take the rook, and then again. So this battery is really powerful. Now, the move is just to go queen g4. And this is a brilliant move because it's like, wait, what is happening? So the queen cannot take. Now the move, the queen is going to move away. Now you can give up the queen again. So the rook cannot take here. This is going to be mate, right? So this is not going to be a useful interposition. Now you give the queen once again. So yeah, this is like a brilliant move, and the queen was sacrificed 3 times in this position. One of the first things we look for is attacks and checks, correct? So how can you give an attack, or how can you give a check on the king without losing your queen? You're playing black. So I hope you found bishop g3. So bishop g3 allows you to give a checkmate. So yeah, so good. Okay, this is a scenario where black overextended their pawns. So it looks like this bishop is trapped, but you can just be calm and go e3. Now, if black gets greedy and they take the bishop, this is mating one, right? So they cannot do that. And if they don't take, they will have to actually play h5, and now you take the pawn, and now you just have a game. But actually, you have a better position, an advantage of +2. There is times where you don't really look for a check or a capture, but here you want to prevent the king from being safe. How can you find a move that accomplishes that? Okay, so the move is bishop a3. Once you move the bishop to a3, now the king cannot castle, and it's going to be such a nightmare for black to play. I want you to pause the video in this one. There's going to be a sequence of 4 moves, of forcing moves that gives you, yeah, that wins the game for white. I want you to pause the video in this one. It's going to be a sequence of 4 moves. You need 4 moves to checkmate. Now, the first move is going to be rook to g7. Okay, that is going to be forcing the king to h6. Now you can fork the 2 pieces, the queen and the knight. So the only move for black is to give a check. So now you go back to h1, and once the queen takes, now you have mating 1. How can you exploit the weakness of the king in this position? It looks like we're about to lose this knight, but you actually can take this pawn. So you can have equal material, but the activity of your pieces and also the overextension of these pawns is going to give you an advantage when you play black in this line. So yeah, once the queen takes and the knight takes, now you can move your knight, and yeah, you have a winning position. Okay, I hope you like this video. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Now you have a full guide on how to identify weaknesses in your games. Remember that process of first identifying the weakness and then finding the move. So okay, take care and see you at the next one.